So today we are reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 4, text 32, the Hansa Guhya prayers. Asita nasita cha vastu nistayor vastu ekstanayo bina viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo saman param yanukulam brihattat astita nastita chavastu nistayo ekastayo bina viruddha dharmana avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo saman param yanukulam brihattat. Somebody else? Astiti nastiti cha vastu nistayo ekastayo bina viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo saman param hi anukulam brihattat. Astiti nastiti cha vastu nistayo ekastayo bina viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo samam param yanukulam brihattat. Astiti nastiti cha vastu nistayo ekastayo bina viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo saman param yanukulam tat. Are there any ladies who would like to chant the verse? Astiti nastiti cha vastu nistayo ekastayo bina viruddha dharmano avekshitam kinchana yoga shankyayo samam param yanukulam brihattat. Asti, there is. Iti, thus. Na, not. Asti, there is. Iti, thus. Cha, and. Vastu nistayo, professing knowledge of the ultimate cause. Ekastanayo, with one and the same subject matter, establishing Brahman. Bhina, demonstrating different. Viruddha dharmano, as opposing characteristics. Avekshitam, perceived. Kinchana, that something which. Yoga Sankyayo, of mystic yoga and the Sankhya philosophy. And Sankhya philosophy is analysis of the ways of nature. Samam, the same. Param, transcendental. He, indeed. Anukulam, brihatat, that ultimate cause. Translation. There are two parties, namely the theists and the atheists. The theists accept the supersoul, the theists who accepts the supersoul finds the spiritual cause through mystic yoga. The Sankhyaite, however, who merely analyzes the material elements, comes to a conclusion of impersonalism and does not accept a supreme cause, whether Bhagavan, Paramatma, or even Brahman. Instead, he is preoccupied with the superfluous external activities of material nature. Ultimately, however, both parties demonstrate the absolute truth, because although they offer opposing statements, their object is the same ultimate cause. They are both approaching the same Supreme Brahman, to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. So I'll repeat section by section. There are two parties, namely the theists and the atheists. The theists, who accept the supersoul, find the spiritual cause through mystic yoga. The Sankhyaite, however, who merely analyzes the material elements, comes to a conclusion of impersonalism and does not accept a supreme cause, whether Bhagavan, Paramatma, or even Brahman. Instead, he is preoccupied with the superfluous, external activities of material nature. Ultimately, however, both parties demonstrate the absolute truth, because although they offer opposing statements, their object is the same ultimate cause. They are both approaching the same Supreme Brahman, to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. Om Agyana Timrahandasya Gyana Gyana Salakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. So this particular verse is a very significant one. It has a full 2.5 page purport. But I don't intend to go into detail on the purport because it's a highly philosophical and analytical one. And it required me, in preparation, to spend quite a few minutes going over each paragraph very carefully to actually follow the thread. And generally when one is studying with the book or listening, the book student is easier because you have everything, you can read it again and so forth. So for this reason I would like to skip reading this purport, perhaps just refer to certain points. But this is a very interesting purport from the perspective of how the atheist and the theist are actually dealing with the same thing. They're seeing the same thing, but they're seeing it from different angles. One point that Srila Prabhupada makes is this. But if I then say, and do you know something? Nobody created this. Nobody made this. It came about, it sort of evolved into a temple. Once there was just land here and a tree. And then gradually and slowly over time, this temple came about. And it's very nice, and we like to come here every day, but we're not quite sure if anyone actually had anything to do with putting the bricks in place or the RCC in the middle. Then we have a problem there. We will be telling them, no, we know who was the architect of this temple, and we know who went and collected the money for this temple, and we know the man who painted the walls, and we know the person who put this metal grill up here, and we know why he put that metal grill up there, because of the monkeys. And we know why they have this here and that there and so on and so forth. And the person can say, can you prove it? And we can say, yes, we can bring some of those people forward. We can provide witnesses that this person did this and this person did that. And then they might say, yes, you've given so many evidences, but I don't accept them. I don't accept them. So all the time that we have been arguing, we have been studying the same subject, the temple. And now we come to the conclusion, maybe no one created it, maybe someone created it, so we have a difference of perspective there. But our study has been of the same subject matter all along. This is a very profound way to think, because the world today is so full of all these kind of divisions, categories and divisions, so that people are classified and some are there and some are there, and to get that unity, and not a kind of unity based on nationality, or unity based on gender, or unity based on age, or unity based on experience. All of those things can change. But to get a genuine cause of unity together, we have to be able to see how all those elements, all those different pieces, are all part of one supreme whole. So this prayer is one of the Hansagulya prayers. And this prayer was being presented, it is not created by, but it is being presented by Daksha. And you may remember, if you have been following the Bhagavatam, that in the 4th canto, at the beginning of the 4th canto, Daksha appeared as the son of Lord Brahma. And he was also busy at that time in propagating the world's population, because this is in Satya Yuga. So he was busy doing his seva, but then he made an error of judgment in becoming angry and offended by Lord Shiva. And when he made this mistake of considering himself and his role, his birth even, as superior to that of Lord Shiva, then that led into a series of incidents that caused him to become angry with his own daughter. And when he became angry with his daughter, and when she saw his attitude towards Lord Shiva, she took a very firm stand on behalf of him. And she said that I no longer want to have a name connected with you. So I will finish my life, and then I'll have nothing to do with you anymore. And she sat down, and with a mystic yogic fire, she burnt her body that was given to her by her father Daksha, completely destroyed her body. And when Lord Shiva heard this, he was so angry, and he came and he actually, his followers beheaded Daksha. And then Daksha was returned with a goat's head. And then that's not very comfortable, by the way, to have the head of a goat attached to your human frame. But he had a goat's head. And then he reappeared again as the son of Marissa. And Marissa was the wife of the Prachetas. And the Prachetas were the sons of Prachinbahi. And Prachinbahi came in the dynasty of who? Yes, Swayambhuva Manu. So this is the first, this is a very vast subject matter in the Vedas. And so sometimes we feel like it's too much for my little brain. Because I know past, present and future. I know 1 year, 2 years, I know days, seconds and hours. But when you start talking about Lord Brahma's life, and it's in thousands and thousands of segments, and they last so long, it goes beyond my power to actually identify with it. But if you simplify that time in the heavenly planets is exactly the same, but the duration of each segment is vastly different, then you will find that Lord Brahma has 14 different segments in his day. And the first segment is when Lord Brahma creates Swayambhuva Manu. And at that time, Daksha appeared. But after he left his body, his goat-headed body, he performed many, 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 many austerities so that he could take birth again and continue with what was his interest and his service. And that was to create progeny. So nowadays, if somebody has 20 children, it will definitely be a news report article. And there perhaps are many people who have many wives or many illegitimate partnerships, and maybe they have 20 children. But for a progenitor, a personality like Daksha, he's not only creating all the population, the human population, but he's creating also the animals and the trees and the birds and the fish and all the living entities' forms, so that living entities can come into these forms and they can continue with the chain of activities that they left their last life wanting. Say I want to become very famous and I want to travel all over the world, but I live in a small village somewhere in India and I have no money to do that. If I meditate on that and meditate on that and meditate on that, and at the time of death, if that desire predominates over my other desires, then I will find myself placed in a situation where I can continue with what I wanted. And in this way, Daksha, he left this world and he returned again with the same very fixed intention of acting as a progenitor. Now it's very interesting that further in this particular chapter, in the chapter summary, Srila Prabhupada speaks about how Daksha was very materialistic and he was only interested in sex life. You may have read this already. And he criticizes Daksha from one perspective. But then after he offers these prayers, because his progenitor work wasn't coming on so good, so he went and he prayed like this. He wanted the impetus, the help to do what he wanted to do. When the Lord was pleased with his prayers, which were not his creation, but they were the prayers that have been given in the Vedas and spoken from time immemorial, when he pleased him with these prayers, then the Lord first gave him a wife. And in his case, because of his function, he received a beautiful wife, a very, very attractive wife. But when the Lord spoke to him, he emphasized to him, you'll see in the future verses you'll hear, how he praised him and thanked him for what he was about to do, because he explained that you are actually helping in my service. So on one hand, Srila Prabhupada is criticizing or analyzing in a critical way. He's a materialist, he's materialistic, he's exalted, but his intentions are materialistic. And on the other side, the Lord is saying, you are helping with my service, with my desire, with what I want to achieve. So I read this with interest. How is this? And the first thing I noted was that, and this is there in the purports, that the Lord is extremely friendly, extremely kind. And he travels in the heart along with the jiva, and we've heard this so many times. He travels like two birds, and one bird is very busy trying to experience everything and have a good time. And the other bird is watching, waiting, and very, very patient. So I feel for myself, it is very important to remember both. That I should not waste my time in this world trying to expand my kingdom and my treasures, because they will all be washed away with the force of time. But at the same time, I should understand that the Lord who is traveling with me is very, very friendly and patient. And he is constantly waiting for an opportunity to remind me that I will find far greater happiness if I turn to him. And if I take my desire for pleasure and my desire for whatever else I see in this world of value, if I take that and I place it at his feet and say, this is who I am, you have created me like this, you already know who I am, you already know who I am, and you want me to do something with these attributes that you have given me, please guide me in doing that. This is actually surrender. For so long, I will speak personally, for so long I had a great fear of the concept of surrender, because I identified it with the understanding that if I surrender, Krishna is going to say, at last, you've understood that all the things you have are actually mine, and now I want them all back. And he's going to take them all away, and I'm going to become a nothing. And this comes back to this astiti, nastiti. And if he's a nothing, then certainly I'm a nothing. But if he's a personality, then I'm a personality. And I'm a part of him. A part, but distinct from him. So if he can love, I can love. And if I can love, he can love. And what is the nature of this love? The nature of this love between the Lord and the living entity is full of unconditional, unreserved affection. And when I understand that, then, Srila Prabhupada says, the path of bhakti is very, very easy. It's very, very easy when we get that point. When that penny, as they say, if you have a money box, a box, you're keeping money, and you drop one penny, and when it lands, it makes a sound. And when it makes that sound, the penny drops, it means, I understood that. Now I've understood that. So Krishna consciousness means to continue with your practices, even in a mechanical way, or even in a slow and lazy way, until those practices gradually bring you forward and you mature. So when the Lord appeared before Daksha, after he offered this beautiful series of prayers that are very analytical and very strictly Vedic. When the Lord appeared with all the devas came as well, and all the singers, the apsaras, everybody was there, and it was so majestic. Then Daksha, he fell down on the ground. He was frightened at first, but then when he overcame his fear, he was very, very, very happy to see the Lord. And then the Lord said these words to him of appreciation, and he told him that little by little living entities come back to me. Little by little. And therefore I have made this huge arrangement, and they can be anywhere doing whatever they want, but I am just waiting to bring each one of them individually, simultaneously or whenever, a step further towards me, a step further towards me. And ultimately, for those who are extremely fortunate, this journey takes them, maybe it takes them millions of births, if that's their choice. Or maybe it takes them only a few births, but it takes them higher and higher and higher. They evolve. Of course, it's like a game, of snakes and ladders. And some places are ladders and you go up, and some places there's a snake and you go down. So you can go up and down. It's not that you automatically only go up. But the purpose of this whole creation is to slowly bring everybody up from wherever they are, upwards, upwards, upwards. And where is the goal of this upward ascension? Goloka Vrindavan. The goal of this ascension is to enter into Vrindavan. And here we are. Isn't it odd? We're all here physically in the temple that Srila Prabhupada has built, and invited people from all over the world to please come and visit Vrindavan. We're touching the dust imperceptibly at every moment, the dust which is the purifying factor of Vrindavan. But perhaps our minds are wandering here and there over a million different subject matters. So we too need to be very patient with our ascension. And if we're fortunate enough that we have come to Vrindavan, we should not only emphasize patience, we should emphasize a little determination, because you've come so close, you're touching something so high. So you should not be patient meaning lazy. You should be patient meaning determined. How am I going to make some progress? Look at me. I don't have any good qualities. How am I going to make some progress? And yet, I'm going to make some progress because I have touched the dust of Vrindavan. I have touched the dust of Vrindavan. And every day we get our sweeping lady to sweep it all out, right? And we go on parikrama and we take a good bath and wash it all off. And again, it just touches us all over our bodies. And Srila Prabhupada pointed out that the dogs here are very fortunate. Why? Because they sleep in the dust of Vrindavan most of the day. Occasionally they wake up and bark and fight with each other, but quite soon after that they go right back to sleep. And when you go to Govardhan, sometimes when we have our Govardhan retreat, you go out on the Prikram path when it's empty, and you see all these dogs and there's nothing else, no people. The solitary pig is making his way through, monkeys in the trees and on the hill, and these dogs, and they're just lying there all day in the dust of Giriraj or the dust of Vrindavan. So while we're here, whether we're living here, we're fortunate enough to reside here, or we're fortunate enough to visit here regularly, or we're fortunate enough to have been raised here, or we're fortunate enough to come for the first time. We should make sure that we never forget that this dust that is coming all over us is the source of our good fortune here in Vrindavan. But nevertheless, this argument goes on. Stiti astiti, atheist, theist. And in Kali Yuga, Srila Prabhupada has said that the atheist and the theist exist within the same person. One time a very serious devotee I know, he told me, every morning I wake up an atheist. And I was so shocked when he said that. I thought he was a very serious devotee. How could he say such a thing? And then I became a little observant myself of my first thoughts when I first wake up in the morning, before I do anything, when I first open my eyes. And I began to see that so many of my thoughts had me in the center, and what I wanted, and what I was going to do, and how I was going to do it. And there was hardly a thought initially of myself as a completely insignificant servant. And then I realized that I too, every morning, am an atheist. And if I don't want to remain an atheist all day, I have to do something to shift my consciousness. So I want to read this translation again, and I hope you have learned something from hearing it. Let me repeat it again. There are two parties, namely the theists and the atheists. The theists, who accepts the supersoul, finds the spiritual cause through mystic yoga or bhakti yoga. And the Sankhyaite or the Jnani or the atheist merely analyzes the material elements and comes to a conclusion of impersonalism and does not accept a supreme cause, whether Bhagavan, Paramatma, or even Brahman. Even the idea that everything is all one, they won't even believe or accept that. Instead, what is the atheist doing? He is preoccupied with the superfluous, external activities of material nature. Ultimately, however, both parties, the atheist and the theist, demonstrate the absolute truth. This word demonstrate is an interesting word. They demonstrate the absolute truth. Because although they're offering opposing statements, their object of focus is the same ultimate cause. They are both approaching the same Supreme Brahman, to whom I offer my respectful obeisances. Thank you very much. Any questions? Or if there's time, I don't know if I'm... Okay. Is there any questions? It's very hard to find a question, isn't it? Because it means you have to have been listening, and if you listen to something else is spoken, and you forget what you were listening to, that was going to be a question, because you have to listen. And so then you lose it. And sometimes you have a question, but it's gone already. And then you feel really put on the spot. Question. And sometimes we think, I don't have any questions because I know all this already. Then we should ask the question, what do I do if I think I know everything already? It's a very good question. Because on a computer, when you're sort of seeing something and you want to re-energize it, you press a refresh button and it brings it back again. So we need to have a psychic or a heart refresh button, where we refresh our knowledge and we refresh our understanding and we revitalize what we know. And we become happy that we're re-energizing, and we become happy to think, actually, I don't know anything. Because even greatest scientists always felt, actually, I've just begun on my path of discovery. With all my studies, I know nothing. So this is a very nice approach to take, when we try to understand the supreme cause of everything, which is unlimited. How can we understand? How can we understand? How can we understand? Dhammapa Prabhu, how can we understand the supreme cause of everything, which is unlimited? We have finite brains. Do you have an answer? Does anyone have an answer? I'll ask you questions if you won't ask me questions. Does anyone have an answer? A suggestion? Yes.
First we should understand that we don't understand.
First we should understand that we don't understand. Thank you. I think that's really important. Because if you think you understand, just like, sometimes I've seen like the children, they come in from the Gurukula, and I was a Gurukul teacher once. And I used to have 4 or 5 boys sitting in front of me. And my business was to keep them quiet. This was not in Vrindavan. My business was to keep them quiet and to keep their hands folded. Had to sit up straight, fold their hands, and listen. They were like 8 or 9 or 7 years old. What could they understand? But later some of them would say to me, I know everything about Bhagavad Gita. I've been listening to Bhagavatam class since I was 4 years old. I know everything. There's nothing for me to know. I already know everything. And I would think back, when you were 4 years old or 5 years old or 7 years old, what went in your brain and remained there? If anything went in your ears, it went out the other one. So what do you know? So the first thing is to accept the mood of a student. I'm just a baby. I'm nobody advanced or elevated. I don't know anything. That's the first prerequisite if you want to know something. And? Do we have another hand up at the back? Go to someone who has understood this. But if it's unlimited, who can understand it? Does that mean they have an unlimited brain? And I have a limited brain? So, are you saying that by mercy one can understand? By some mercy, one may be able to get some, I would say, by mercy, from my own experience, by some mercy, I may get just a glimmer of a hint of an idea of something. And that's an amazing amount. And if I use that, and I think about that a lot, it leads me usually to another little clue on this journey of spiritual discovery. For many years I lived in the Gurukul building with my daughter and my son. We lived in there, and this bell, we would hear this bell throughout the whole day. We didn't even have a clock, because you would count the bell, the bell, the bell. And when Srila Prabhupada was very ailing at the end of his pastimes here in Vrindavan, one time he called one of his servants into his room in great anxiety and said, "Listen." And they couldn't hear anything. And he said, "What do you hear?" And he said, "Nothing, Srila Prabhupada." Exactly. He said, if that bell is not ringing throughout the night, that means that the guard is sleeping. And he had not only the bell ring on the hour, but the half hour as well, to keep the person who was guarding awake. So he was very meticulous on all the details of this Krishna Balaram temple. And he wanted that mood to perpetuate in the minds and hearts of the devotees who are maintaining his seva here. So I hope that any of you who are fortunate enough to be living here in Vrindavan for some time, make sure that you have some part to play in maintaining the integrity of Srila Prabhupada's temple. All right. No questions? Thank you. Hare Krishna.